Well, hello, everybody. We have a busy evening plan, so let's get started. My name is Charlene Margot, and I'm co-founder of nonprofit The Parent Venture that brings you this program, the Parent Education Series, now in its 20th season. We are delighted to have with us tonight Homayoun and Jesse Park from Green Ivy Educational Consulting. Again, this is a really special night. Anna has been a keynote presenter in our program since the very beginning when her first book was published. So this is exciting to see the extension of her work and her writing, and we're really happy to be joined by her colleague, Jesse Park. Please join me, everybody, in a really warm virtual welcome for Anna and Jesse. Take it away.
Well, thank you so much for having us. So Jesse is going to share the slides and we are going to get started. We're so excited to be partnering with the Parent Venture again. I love being back here. And today we're going to talk about something that is happening within your children's own lives, whether you know about it or not, their use of AI tools. So as Charlene generously mentioned, our focus is on executive functioning skills. And these skills are actually even more critical in today's world. So just this morning, the Today Show did this segment on jobs in the workplace and AI. And it shared this stat that I found was really helpful. 85% of people are going to have their jobs changed by a quarter or more in the coming years because of AI. However, workplaces are really going to need communication skills, public speaking skills, conflict management skills, innovation skills. So these are not going to go away. And the reason we wanted to talk about this is that we wanted to make sure that parents had practical strategies. And it was born out of our work with students and our own professional development that we do in our office. So I wanted to give a little bit of a quick introduction. Charlene did such a good job. But our work really is focused on helping students develop the organization, planning, prioritization, ability to start and complete tasks, and adaptability, which is so key in this world where all these tools are changing so quickly.
I'm Jesse Park. I'm an academic advisor at Green Ivy. I also serve as a curriculum and data specialist for Luminaria Learning. From this talk, we want all parents to walk away feeling confident that they can navigate this historical technological change that we're all going through.
So, our agenda for tonight is this. We're going to start with today's reality and our overall mission, and we're going to talk about some pitfalls that you all can navigate. We want to give some strategies for staying in charge of thinking and talk more about the parent partnership. Our practical strategies are rooted in what you can do at home today, and that's where we'll end with our key takeaways. So we'll talk for about 40 to 45 minutes, and then we'll have some time for Q&A. This is really a prescriptive talk, so we know that some of you have a lot of experience with AI tools, and then some of you have maybe never used any tools. So we want to meet everybody where they're at. So our key idea is this. Take what works for you and your family and leave the rest. Every child, every family is different. And so we wanted to provide some strategies that you could walk away with and some practical examples and some research. So I want to start with a reality check, right? So the really interesting thing we found in preparing for this talk is today's high school seniors are the last class of students who remember high school before ChatGPT. So your children are living through this incredible historic change. ChatGPT launched midway through their sophomore year. And today's world, students are using AI tools for everything from homework help to study guides to exam prep and research. One of the most concerning things that we'll also talk about is their use of AI companions. So research shows that over half of students use an AI companion. So that's a friendship or a relationship bot on a monthly basis. And the Institute for Family Studies did a survey of 2,000 adults who were under 40, and they found that 25% of young adults believe that AI has the potential to replace real life romantic relationships. So this is really coming for our workplace, but also the way we interact with others. And this is why we think it's so important for parents to understand what's going on so that they have practical strategies and ways to talk to kids. You know, there was a recent op-ed in the San Francisco Chronicle. I don't know if you saw it a few weeks ago, where San Jose State sociology professor, recently warned that the campus's AI everywhere approach really undermines the purpose of higher education because she tested the tutor tool that the school is using by asking it to complete an assignment for her class. And the results, she said, were so astounding that she realized that students could get by with very little minimal effort. So that's really the key of where we are today. There's so many different things happening. And so Jesse's going to talk more about our mission and the 5 things we really want to watch out for.
Our mission is that we really want students who ask questions and not just accept answers. Being a critical thinker means our students are evaluating information regardless of the source. The key is that AI should be a tool that enhances their thinking, not entirely replaces it. Whether it's at home or in the classroom, we want students to be curious about all AI-generated content they may see online. At this point, AI is everywhere, even if we are aware of it or not. Things like Grammarly, social media algorithms, voice assistants are all AI powered. Even Google searches now default to showing you an AI summary as the very first thing you see. For students specifically, AI has become incredibly useful for learning. Students can use this for exam prep, study guides, practice tests, getting feedback before submitting an assignment. Students can essentially use AI as a 24/7 office hours service. In February of this year, CEO of NVIDIA Jensen Huang even said that he would encourage everyone, not just students, to get an AI tutor. AI can really help students brainstorm and build on existing ideas and can point students towards sources and topics to explore for research. AI can also be especially helpful for students with learning differences. So when used thoughtfully, AI can really enhance learning for all of us. But there are real challenges that we want to help students recognize. And as we said before, these aren't necessarily reasons to avoid AI, but more reasons to use it more thoughtfully. We're going to look at limitations of AI through the lenses of bias, inaccuracy, over-reliance, academic integrity, and finally, emotional dependence. Understanding these limitations is really what's going to separate thoughtful AI users from passive consumers. So for myself, ChatGPT launched during my junior year of college, and I was able to see firsthand how AI would transform education. Things like writing emails for clubs or helping me create a plan of what to study, or even helping me debug code when professors weren't available later in the evening. Everyone's approach to getting things done started to change. For classes that once allowed take-home assessments and a lot of the work was being done outside of class, there was a level of trust that started to erode between instructors and students. Now, as an educator helping students develop executive functioning skills, I'm genuinely worried seeing the other side of it, where students can't start an essay without AI generating an outline, or won't even try to grasp a complex piece of text without AI summarizing it first. They're outsourcing some of the very skills, planning and comprehension, that they need to build for college and beyond. I want to talk about bias first. And so the key insight here is that AI learns from the data that humans create, which includes our biases. The impact on learning for students is that they may unknowingly develop narrow perspectives based on AI outputs. For example, they might write a history report that only includes Western viewpoints because that's what the AI emphasizes, realizing that they may be missing out on crucial perspectives that were discussed in class. When information sounds comprehensive and authoritative, students may not question what's missing. Something parents can do at home is ask the simple question, what other viewpoints might exist on the topic? Encourage your students to seek out other perspectives or offer your own so that they can see things from a different angle. Next, I want to talk about inaccuracy. And this past summer, OpenAI CEO Sam Altman recently said that people have a very high degree of trust in ChatGPT, which is interesting because AI hallucinates. It should be the tech that you don't trust that much. The key danger here is that AI presents wrong information with complete confidence and almost zero uncertainty markers. Students can lose the fact-checking habit when information sounds smart and credible. And so things parents can do at home are look things up together when AI gives surprising information, really try to model that verification process for them. AI might confidently provide incorrect dates or fake statistics that sound plausible. And if you notice that your child is using AI and facts like these are raising eyebrows, encourage them to check the links that AI outputs give them and look for these facts on their own using other trusted sources. 3, I want to talk about this idea of over-reliance. Depending on AI too often can really impact independent problem-solving abilities. Students will miss developing their authentic voice and analytical skills. In a recent article last month entitled "I'm a High Schooler, AI is Demolishing My Education" in The Atlantic, a high school senior in New York recently wrote about watching classmates drop entire chapters worth of reading into ChatGPT for instant annotations. And this turned what was supposed to be a reflective, thought-provoking discussion on enslavement and human resilience into copy and paste commentary. The student also described how deadline pressure used to create frantic productivity and sharpen minds, but now relatively few students seem to feel that work is urgent. They feel that they can always fall back on their super tutor, that is AI, to just do the work for them. In the work that Anna and I do with students, helping them with planning, prioritizing, and task initiation, I've seen AI create a lack of urgency at times, which makes it easier for students to avoid starting tasks. Additionally, the same student in The Atlantic noted that AI has destroyed much of what tied us together as students. The shared experience of working through challenges and relating to hard work that your classmates are putting forward has now been replaced by shortcuts. There's a missed opportunity for connection here, where students aren't interacting with their peers anymore based on common challenges and difficult concepts by just talking to AI instead. A question that parents can ask themselves at home is your child able to brainstorm and outline ideas before they turn to AI? If your child seems lost or frustrated when AI isn't available, that could potentially be a warning sign. Try to encourage them to independently brainstorm first and use AI as a launchpad to enhance existing ideas. Next, I want to talk about academic integrity. When we discuss navigating this particular challenge, though, we aren't just talking about knowingly cheating on an assignment. Students can unintentionally violate a teacher's AI policy or blur the line between acceptable support and over-reliance. The biggest challenge here is how should students navigate the process of creating original work in this age of AI given all of these mixed signals? If AI can always provide easy answers, students may stop wrestling with challenging concepts. And beyond simply just cheating on an assignment, that wrestling with those hard concepts is where the deep learning happens. The struggle to work through difficulties builds cognitive resilience and helps knowledge stick in ways that these quick solutions simply cannot replicate. So at home, things parents can do are: 1, understand the AI policies that your child's teachers have. These may differ across subjects, and teachers might have their own preferences. I've seen students whose teachers allow them to research and even summarize sources when writing an essay, and I've also seen the flip side where teachers strongly oppose the use of AI on any task. It's important that families and students know what's allowed and what isn't so that the students aren't receiving these mixed signals. 2, try to walk through your students' thinking processes instead of only looking at final products. Ask about the journey and not just the destination with questions like, how did you figure that out? As opposed to asking questions like, is this correct?
So now I want to talk about the emotional dependence. So AI chatbots now offer a compelling alternative to real human connection, and that is a problem. So the media has now covered some of the most extreme cases of AI companionship. So people falling in love with or lured into religious extremism, or even encouraged to harm themselves by AI companions. So we've seen that there's apps out there like Replica, Character AI, and others that market themselves as AI friends or companions. This is how I originally found out about this was several years ago at South by Southwest EDU. A colleague of mine, Julia Freeland Fisher, who's a researcher with the Clayton Christensen Institute, she has a great Substack and she does a lot of great things on LinkedIn and talking about this stuff. She was sharing how data says over half of teens engage monthly with AI companions, and also that it's not just these not suitable for work bots that are starting to penetrate the social circles, a majority of workers who use AI frequently for productivity report having a better relationship with their AI companions than with their actual work colleagues. The reason this is problematic for humans in general is that these apps become highly personalized. They become emotionally responsive and they're really affirming for some people, especially teens, right? As they're trying to navigate friendships and relationships, the app becomes emotionally addictive because there's no friction that normally happens in a normal friendship where there's a back and forth. There's a lot of affirmation and there's a lot of positive feedback that isn't just typical of a friendship. So in September 2024, Mark Cuban had an interview with a tech journalist from Wired, and he predicted that AI systems will know so much about users that even children will forge strong relationships with them. So he said, you will have a little Lauren LLM. By the time Lauren's 11, that's probably going to be her best friend, which is really scary for all of us to think. Because what students miss is these real relationships that involve disagreement, pushback, and genuine accountability, which are all crucial for growth. And then if you think back to what I said at the very beginning about that Today Show segment in the workplace and AI, we know one of the key skills moving forward in the age of AI in the workplace is conflict management, being able to have tough conversations, being able to communicate across differences. The problem is AI is always agreeable, which sounds supportive, but it actually doesn't teach resilience and ability to move forward. So what parents can do is really familiarize yourself with the AI companions that children may be using. Now, I said this the same way for social media. If your children are using it, or your children's friends are using it, or kids in the community are using it, you are going to see it permeate, even if you say, that you don't allow your kids to use it, right? So the fact that it's in the community means that your kids will likely be affected. So watching for the signs that your child is turning to AI for emotional support or advice about serious issues rather than speaking to a trusted adult or friend is actually something that's really important. Our key goal is that every child has multiple places where they feel a sense of connection, but also that they have multiple trusted adults that you trust that they can turn to. It might not be a parent or caregiver, that it's just that you know who those people are. So when we think about staying in charge of our thinking, our focus is always on solutions given the situation. So I can't say that AI is going to go away or that we're going to have all these restrictions. It's like when I wrote social media wellness. I know that kids are using these. I know it's everywhere. So I want to provide practical solutions. And so this talk, the entire talk actually came out of the professional development that we do in our own office. Jesse had designed this and he had knocked it out of the park. And I said, this really is helpful for parents as well, which is what this came out as. So the number one thing we want to have students do is become critical evaluators of AI. So there's a term that I use, savvy consumers. We want them to be savvy consumers of AI, that they put their own values into place and look at AI with a critical eye, that they're always verifying. So it's automatic, like spell check, right? They're always using it as a secondary tool, not that main source of support. So for example, with math problems, there's really great use cases where a student can get support on figuring out what a solution is and figuring out what the steps look like. But we want them to use that as a way of making sure they understand the problem rather than just copying it down and not realizing the when, where, why you would use each specific step. We also want them to really ask questions and reflect. So the key here is the active engagement with the AI output rather than the passive acceptance. And I, as an adult, do this all the time where I'll see things, I will ask something, and then I'll look at the output and I'll be like, oh, critical thinking wise, that's not actually going to make sense. These four ideas make sense, but these four will not make sense given what I'm actually asking and given the human overlay of the situation. So we want to make sure that students are staying these critical evaluators. The questions that students should always ask, really, these are the mental checklists that you as parents can develop, right? Is this information accurate, right? This is the verification habit. What perspective might I be missing? This is addressing that bias issue that we talked about earlier. Am I able to verify this? This is building research skills. So where is this factual or not factual? Can I do this on my own now, where I prevent this over reliance? I'll give you a quick example. I was looking for some research on executive functioning skills, and I saw something pop up, and I went back to check it, and the AI tool was like, "Oh yeah, that's actually not accurate." Um, and it had just spit it out to like smooth out a sentence, and I was like, "Okay, this is where we always need to verify." And then when we think about the transparency in the classroom, here's where students can be their own best advocate of really understanding, right? What is the AI policy and how is it enforced? Here's the thing. After years of working with schools on social media and social media policies, it took so long for those to be in place. But don't assume that there's a clear policy in place. Many schools are still developing theirs. And if they have one, ask how it's actually implemented in classrooms, because not what's just written on paper, because policies can vary widely by teacher or department. We see this all the time in our office, where within one school, you'll have teachers who say very different things about the use of AI, and kids can get confused. I mean, kids now are juggling, 6 different teachers by the time they get to middle school or high school, all with different ways of assigning homework, collecting homework, and now, use of AI tools. Something that could be helpful is creating a chart that helps them see, what are the policies and where are they able to use things. And be prepared that you might get very different answers from different teachers. And then also discuss with teachers, and this is what you can encourage students to do, when AI help is appropriate for assignments and when it's not, right? So having direct conversation with individual teachers, and this is something as students get older, is really their responsibility as an advocate. This is where they can go into office hours and see that it may differ significantly by class, but even by assignment or type of assignment. So questions that can be asked are, can students use AI for brainstorming, for editing, for research? This helps you support children at home with consistent messaging, and keeping track of that may be kind of tricky. So making sure your child understands the school's expectations around AI use, understanding and coming from a place of support and also understanding that this is confusing, that often students, we're seeing this in our office, are receiving mixed messages because everything is changing so quickly. And so one teacher will allow AI, another absolutely doesn't. So encourage kids to really figure out what that looks like. The key point here is that you're partners with the school on this journey. And if your child is confused about AI boundaries, that's valuable feedback for teachers to hear. And an open dialogue really benefits everyone, the students, the parents, the caregivers, educators.
Next, we'll talk more about the parent partnership. We know that parents play such a crucial role in how students are interacting with technology, so we wanted to provide some practical strategies on things you can do in your own home regarding AI. At home, we encourage you to model responsible AI use yourself. So use AI tools and show your own fact checking and critical thinking skills. For example, let's say that ChatGPT gave you some vacation recommendations. Cross check those first on other websites and see the reviews before you book. Discuss AI tools with your students. Show interest in what they're using, avoid judgment, and maintain curiosity. Try to really get familiar with the tech that they're interacting with. We encourage everybody to act like anything that you put into ChatGPT or any other AI is public. We don't want to be sharing any private information on any of these sites. Next, encourage independent thinking first. Before students turn to AI, ask your child to independently brainstorm and make initial attempts. Try to use the AI as an accelerator and not just the starting point. And lastly, as Anna just mentioned, consistency between home and school expectations can help send a clear message to students about how they can implement AI in their lives for the better. Before we transition to final slides, we wanted to provide some quick conversation starters to use at home to get the ball rolling. What AI tools did you use for homework? Be curious, non-judgmental, and really just gather information on what they did. What would you have done differently without AI? This helps them reflect on AI's role in completing a task. Did the AI suggest anything that didn't make sense to you? How did you navigate that confusion? This question is going to be excellent for building critical thinking skills and working in tandem with AI. Next, do you have a better understanding of how to do this on your work now? This is going to check for genuine learning and comprehension, not just completion. Lastly, how did you verify this AI generated information? This is going to reinforce verification habits and can help students develop better research skills. The key here is that all these questions should feel like genuine interest and just start a conversation about AI use.
So when we think about those practical strategies, we want to also offer a review of how these are these signs that your child may be over relying on AI. The first thing is this difficulty starting work without AI assistance. They can't begin essays, projects, or problems without AI input. What we're seeing in schools is that a lot of schools are starting to do more and more offline, right? If I was going to say 5 years ago, particularly during the pandemic, everything was online. But just yesterday, I had a student that I was cleaning out their backpack with them, and I noticed so many more handouts and so many more things that they were writing by hand, in part because I think a lot of students are having a difficulty doing things online without using AI. And then having that inability to explain their own work. If they can't walk you through their thinking, they may not fully understand it. So the key ways to work our memory and retain information is just closing the book, closing the computer, and explaining it to someone else. So if they can't do that, if they can't walk you through all that steps, because they've been checking their work using AI, that may be a problem. Their reluctance to revise or think critically about AI suggestions. So if they're not able to be that savvy consumer and they accept the first responses without question, that's something that we want to, really question and have them think through what are different ways of doing this. What we're really worried it leading to this decreased confidence in their own abilities, right? They doubt their own thinking. They seem intimidated by AI free tasks. And they'll, in the end, the worst thing for us, and it's not on this slide, is this turning to AI for emotional support. Now, I want to say that when social media had that first generation, first iteration, they had these anonymous apps. And I always thought, and everybody used to think these are terrible, these are awful. But what I found was that, especially on these anonymous apps that had geolocators, there, didn't have a critical mass of users by my office in Los Altos. But I would see that sometimes teenagers would get online and they would ask for mental health support or ideas around that, something that they might not ask publicly, right? And then people would offer answers that were actually really great and supportive and helpful. And the reason I give this example is we're not saying that all, looking for research or looking for answers around mental health or other support is all bad. But when people turn to AI for friendship and emotional support at a level where it impedes their ability to develop authentic connections with humans, then we're worried. So instead of having trusted adults, trusted peers, supporters, clarifiers that they're turning to, if they're instead turning to AI, that's where we are starting to worry. So when we think about reinforcing that AI literacy at home, what you can do is practice that fact checking together. Like use a family topic or a current event or even a viral social media claim and make it a shared activity rather than feeling like a lesson. Just being curious, open, just being like, oh, what can we figure out here? I also think it's really helpful to discuss those real world AI errors. When we were doing research, Jesse and I found these AI mistakes that we found really interesting. Like just this past week, Deloitte had to partially refund the Australian government for a report that was apparently littered with AI generated errors. Those kind of current events, when we talk again about social media versus AI, we used to do those current events as family topics of ways we could have this conversation without being pressured or judgmental. Like, here's what's happening. It's not all right. These are some errors. How would you have caught that or done something differently? And then also celebrating that original thinking. So praising creativity, those unique perspectives, the independent problem solving. And then finally, I think this rings true for everyone, asking children to teach us. So one of the greatest ways to get kids to start talking about what they're learning about, what they're seeing online, what they see their friends using online, is just really be curious and like pretend that you don't know, and maybe you don't actually know. And ask them questions about like, what are you using? What are you seeing? What are you seeing your friends using? Can you show me how to use this? Oh wow, I see that this created this output. Or like, what are these companion apps? What do you think about them? Just asking those questions. I had never used one of those companion apps till I was at South by Southwest with Julia Freeland Fisher, and she had done a workshop, and we were just really surprised at just by how many within a conversation, the back and forth, how quickly it turned from a, innocuous friendship into some sort of romantic suggestion with these AI companion slash relationship apps. And I think parents, if you try this, know this, is really important for you to know the conversation. I think one of the things Jesse and I thought about as we were thinking about this presentation is that before there was all of this conversation about, having people not use phones or having kids never access social media. The challenge here is AI is really everywhere already, as Jesse said at the beginning. So it's really hard to say you can't use this or you're never going to use this or we don't allow this because it's permeated into so many things that we use in our day to day without even thinking about it. So when we think about these key takeaways and what we want students to remember, it's this. AI is a powerful tool, but it's not a replacement for thinking. This is the central message, right? Students need to know how to verify, how to question, and how to maintain their own voice. These are the three key behaviors we really want to encourage. That parents, you all play this crucial role in modeling critical thinking and modeling that savvy consumerism of not just taking the output, right? Your partners in this education, they look at the adults in their lives first. Transparency and open communication really do build that trust. It's okay to say, hey, I actually don't know the answer. Let's find this out together, right? Or let's make sure that you're safe, right? Make sure you're as you're navigating this world, that we're giving you the right tools. Our ultimate goal is this, and it ties back to what I said at the very beginning. If we're thinking about these skills around executive functioning and the skills that students need for the workplace, we want kids to be confident, curious learners who use AI effectively. We want them to be empowered and not dependent. And this reinforcement is these points should all guide the conversation, right? So as we think through this, we want everybody to feel like they are confident, they are curious, and they know how to learn and how to use AI effectively.
Before we move to Q&A, we wanted to leave you with three final tips. With your school, understand the AI policy and model responsible use and best practices at home for your child. For students, we encourage you to keep using AI thoughtfully, ask questions about outputs, and maintain academic integrity. And at home, we encourage parents to continue supporting critical thinking and continue this conversation about how we can use AI for the better.
So we're now open to questions. I am on the Q&A right now. Charlene, how do you want to handle Q&A?
I'm going to, we have some questions that have come in earlier, Anna and Jesse, so I'm going to combine those with what we're hearing from you all. Let's start with this one, though. You have covered such important territory today. And I think it's really critical for parents, as they said, we're kind of in the Wild West with AI. Everything is not settled. Schools have very different rules, whether it's elementary, middle, high school, or college. And as parents, we have to remain curious and help our kids remain curious, right? I know that college professors, some of them are using AI, for example, to help with grading students' papers, but they don't allow their students to use AI. Well, the students don't love that. It's kind of hypocritical. Where should parents fall in that kind of scale? Any suggestions?
So are we talking about, as a clarifying point?
Well, it's for schools that may be really trying to limit AI, should those rules also apply to staff? Do you have any sense of that? I know that teachers are doing lots of reading, and it can be very tempting to use AI tools to give feedback to students, but it's going to be a bit of an unequal slope if students are not being allowed to use AI to generate content.
Oh, so you're talking about like when a student turns in an essay, for example, and
Yeah, and they may get feedback that they think is AI generated. Should
yeah.
should we be pushing back on that?
Well, I think that one of the key ideas is your child learning and getting the support that they need to build their skills, right? So like let's look at that. And if they feel like, part of that is that human interaction with the teacher. And the more that, and all the research is showing, like the more individualized and personalized the experiences in the learning, that's the key piece. So I think staff should be able to use AI as appropriate um, to help them organize, plan, and prioritize their lessons, but not necessarily to go away from, um, the evaluation process, because I think the evaluation process, that's where we need to be really savvy. But when I think about, so for example, I used one of the things that I went to a university and I gave a presentation earlier this year, and I gave the staff, we were talking about syllabus and making the syllabus more uniform across the university so that students, it's around building executive functioning skills. So I gave them two options. They could use the model that we created, put it into an AI model, and take their syllabus and just soften the language, or they could do it by themselves on their own. To me, like it really depends on the person. Because some people, I did not realize this, and it was really funny to me. Like some professors were very like, how dare you even think that we would use AI? And then others were like, oh my gosh, this was such a helpful suggestion. And it made my syllabus that much better. That didn't take away from the fact that they already had created it, but it helped with their editing. So those kind of preparation, I actually don't have as much of an issue with. It's more around the evaluation that I think that needs to be redefined.
All right, thank you for that, Anna. That makes sense. So here's a really good question. The writer is mentioning that we've had speakers in the past who have talked about technology with kids, and one of the main takeaways was parents should really know about how to use the apps that their kids use, or at least be familiar with them. Now, AI is something new. So the question is, how can parents find their students' AI companion and see what they chat about? Can this be done remotely without directly taking the student's phone? That is, remote access to the content of a student's phone. How can parents feel clued in?
So one of the things, so I love that. I wasn't probably that speaker, but that was a key message in my book, Social Media Wellness. If your kid has anything on their phone, you should know how to use it. That's absolutely right. There's two things to think about here. One, if you have an iPhone, and then an Android, I don't know all the technology right now, but you should go, if you have an iPhone, for example, you can go to the Apple Store and get a lot of support, but you should have the family plan regardless. If your kids are under 18, so that you do, and you should be able to set it up so that they have to ask you for permission before they download any new app. So that, and that you have access to what apps they're using. You may not have access to how they're using them, but you have access to what apps are on their phone. That's part one, though. Part two is, if you got to come from a place of curious, non-judgmental, like open and transparent communication, because kids can hide things, right? And so if they think that they are going to get in trouble, it is very easy to hide certain things. They could use it as a web-based application. They can use ChatGPT pretty easily off most computers. So, you and Claude. So you have to think about having those conversations. Now, the relationship apps, though, I think you would have access to, again, if you set up the family plan with your phone, it should have the same thing as any of the other devices. I actually don't know the web integrated pieces of it. So would you have to block that off a computer? Those are the things you could kind of look into. But again, I think it's about having that open communication and maintaining those conversations around current events, around the use of these relationship, and ask them questions about this rather than just kind of a game of, you can't use this. We're going to constantly be monitoring.
Well, and we got really good advice, Anna, from Devorah Heitner, who you know.
Yeah.
And she has always said from the very beginning, parents, if you're going to track your kids, be sure to let them know. Because if you find something, what do you do then? So I think this, especially with AI, don't you think this is a good place to be sure to say to kids, we're going to be sharing, or we're going to ask you to share occasionally, or we'd love to see what you're talking about or how you're using AI?
Well, I think the biggest thing is you always come from a place of safety and care, rather than punitive. We want to get, we're trying to get you in trouble. And so, from a safety perspective, every parent should have access to their child's phone under 18. For a lot of reasons. Now, you don't need 24/7 access to be looking at everything, but the idea is, hey, we have full access because we're responsible. And if you say that up front, like Devorah says, and I totally agree with Devorah on this, that you're upfront about it. Like it's not a big deal. It's not a gotcha situation. And it's not that we're going to literally be staring at your phone every night, but we all do have access and we want to have these conversations to keep you safe. And you say, hey, this technology has changed so quickly, so rapidly. It's evolving that we're still learning ourselves. Again, that's where you play the role of we're still learning. It's all changing. This didn't exist 10 years ago. And something you can say to kids too is the jobs that are going to exist, these middle schoolers, when I think about the middle schoolers I had when I wrote that crumpled paper, they're in jobs that require technology and skills that we weren't even thinking about in 2008, 2009, and the same is true. We got two nice questions about if we speak in schools and to faculty. Yes, all over the country, and we love doing it. So feel free to reach out through our contact form if that's of interest.
All right. And Jesse, since you are arguably a little bit closer to the age of many of the kids that we're talking about, what messaging is working best to talk with teens about AI?
I think, like Anna said, just always coming from a place of like safety and care, just looking out for their best interests, both emotionally and then as my role as an academic advisor. I think just letting them know that they're gonna need these skills eventually and that we want to help them develop them. I think that's what I would say.
Okay, fair enough. That's good advice. We know that teens and young adolescents, they don't want to feel tricked. They want to feel that they are getting an honest rap, especially from technology companies, and that matters, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so this is a question that it's a good one, and we hear this a lot through our neurodiversity education series program. Um, the writer asks, do you, I'm sorry, should special education teachers use AI with students with disabilities and learning disabilities as ways to improve their IEP goals?
That's a really individualized question and it depends on how. But yeah, there are certain ways where we find there are ways that you can generate more practice problems, more specific types of practice problems, more personalized support. Those are all really good use cases, right? What we don't want, though, is that instead of having that human interaction that builds that motivation and identifies the specific needs of the student, that we just put them on sort of a track where they're online all the time. So I think it's great as a supplement, but not as the main tool.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you, Anna. We do hear anecdotally from students with learning differences that they appreciate AI as a way to help them research and get organized for schoolwork, not to replicate or do it, but to help them sort of organize their thinking and do research. Do you feel that that sounds like a good plan?
As long as they're doing their brain dump or they're thinking first, and then they're going and maybe using it to organize their thoughts, it can help them then if they can then use that as a way critically to think, okay, I put all of these together. These are my ideas, right? I'm using a tool that may help me organize my thoughts. And then I'm going back and seeing what actually works or doesn't work. I use this from a let's look at it from a workplace, right? So a young person, a middle school, high school student in 10 years is in the workplace, right? And they need to do certain things. If they learn, hey, I can put this together, then I can put it in and use a tool that helps me organize it so it has a semblance of a system. And then that actually uses and then I use my critical thinking skills to figure out, is that right or wrong? Right? And then that helps me communicate with others. It reduces the friction that would prevent me from finishing a task, but it also uses my critical thinking skills first because I need to use it to generate. And then I also need to use it to check and be a savvy consumer because I don't just take AI output as fact.
Okay, fair enough. That's good to point that out, Anna. Thank you. Here's a good question. You have been talking some about AI companions, and those do worry us as parents and educators. So the question here is, how can parents help their teenage children who use AI instead of building real romantic relationships? We're not saying that this is your business, Anna, but the question is a good question.
Yeah, a really good question. And also not my area of expertise, I will say. But one of the things I will back up and say is that let's think about this from a social media lens, right? We want students to be able to connect with people offline, connection in person without technology. We want them to build those skills, right? So making sure that they have multiple opportunities to engage in multiple different spaces, right? With people in person. Whether that, and the thing is that some kids are not going to find their closest friends at school, and we need to understand that. And we also don't want them to have all their friends in one sort of space of their life. So maybe they have, friends that they know at an outside activity or through a religious organization that aren't at school. We want that, and I think one of the things parents need to realize is we may need to be making extra efforts to making sure kids have offline experiences that are in person. And so let's say a student really struggles with this, you know, depending on the level of struggle, and I want to take the romantic relationships and just focus on person to person connection. Is like, what kind of supports does the student need? Do they struggle with small talk skills? Do they struggle with starting the conversation? Do they struggle with making and maintaining friendships? And wherever that is, what are the supports that we can provide them?
Okay, thank you, Anna. Uh, Here's another question in the neurodiversity lane. This is a good one. The writer asks, what do you suggest for monitoring kids over 18 who are not neurotypical?
This really would this is one of those questions that I would have like 5 follow-up questions before I would be able to give a personalized answer because it really depends on the student's understanding and whether or not and the young adult's understanding and whether or not they can keep themselves safe. And what other pieces are in play for a child. I mean, once a person is over 18, they are an adult unless there are certain pieces of court stuff that's in play that allows a parent to have a role. So, say those don't exist, you actually don't have as much of a say as you would hope. And you can also come from that place of safety and understanding, and then making sure that there are multiple trusted adults that are helping the young adult navigate. So if they're off at college, like I would worry, particularly for students maybe who are off at college and are struggling to make or navigate new friendships, and how they're figuring out, how are they starting relationships in person with people? How are they engaging with others? I've always said if you as the parent aren't the messenger, are you making sure they have those right people who are helping them do those things? That one's a more challenging question. It's like it's more of a like an offline personalized question, just given there's a whole spectrum there that can be the answer to.
Okay, thank you, Anna. So we've been talking tonight a lot about teenagers, but here's a question about slightly younger kids. The question is, you mentioned that 50% of high schoolers have used AI chatbots. Do you know what percentage of middle schoolers have AI companions or late middle schoolers, fourth and fifth graders? My concern as a former early childhood educator is we keep AI out of the hands of young children. But what are you seeing in terms of middle school, elementary school?
I actually don't have any data on that. And I would say if I was a parent of that age group, I would be really hyper vigilant about what kids were doing online. I mean, I think at that point, under 13, there's all sorts of research, there's all sorts of evidence that you want kids to be um, offline as much as possible. Um, but we also know that they access things. They're accessing information, they're doing Google searches that now are AI, the answers are AI generated. Um, so while I don't know the answers, I think a lot of the answer or specific stat on that, I can say that a lot of the things that we talked about tonight are even more relevant and hyper vigilant for that age group. I do think though at that age group, you have a lot more control over what kids are accessing and where they're accessing and how they're accessing.
All right. And Anna, we know that you and your organization at Green Ivy have extensive expertise in executive function. So how do you feel that tools like AI are going to impact kids' executive function skills? Are you worried?
Oh, I love this question. It's like you asked me, I like gave it to you, but I didn't. Here's the thing, and Julia Freeland Fisher, who I mentioned earlier, we've talked about her work. She and I talked about this earlier this year at South by Southwest EDU, because she said, Anna, you got to get behind the fact that actually kids are going to need these skills are not going away. They're actually going to become even more important. And I'll explain why.
Okay.
So the core of executive functions are around inhibitory control, so being able to focus and you know, not be distracted and also emotionally regulate. And then also around working memory, and around cognitive flexibility, so that ability to be adaptable. Those are not actually going away. In fact, in the workplace of the future, we need people who are adaptable, who are able to navigate conflict, who are able to emotionally regulate. So they're able to take the output and be critical thinkers and figure out what information would they take forward. I'll give you a great example. This lawyer that I talked to a couple years ago around AI and law and all this stuff, he's saying, look, when we use AI for certain solutions, what we're finding is they spit out like 10 solutions that if we sat in a room, it would have taken us 4 hours to figure out. But of those 10 solutions, three are not viable. And it would take somebody with high level of critical thinking skills to go through and figure out what 4 to 6 are really viable to move forward with as a solution. So those critical thinking skills are all the more important. It's just we actually need people to have higher levels of critical thinking skills to delineate and move things forward in this new AI impacted world.
Okay, so those skills become even more critical.
Right. And so one thing I'll say too, I see in the chat that somebody asked about executive functioning skills and learning more. So two things. One, we have a newsletter that we send out. It's free. And we put a lot of resources on that. And then my work, if you check out our website or you check out my books, has a lot of fundamental information on executive functioning.
And parents, you can also go to our video library, and we actually have Anna in previous events talking specifically about executive functions. So Bev, maybe you can post that link again, or it has been here in the chat. But our video library is actually our YouTube channel. You can Google the Parent Venture YouTube. So let's see, we have just can you share the website? Yes, we will do that. Parent asked, do you have any resource recommendations for supporting teens develop better social skills?
Oh, you know what? I will include that in the follow-up newsletter and we'll give
Okay.
you access to that. That's a good question around the social skills piece.
Okay. And again, parent, thanking you for the informative presentation. We hope you'll have more workshops and resources in AI and critical thinking in the future. Thank you so much, Anna Homayoun and Jesse Park from Green Ivy Educational Consulting, for a really great evening. We have all learned a lot. You can see we're getting lots of claps and love. So thank you both. Thank you everybody for being here. Really, really interesting conversation. And we will be sending out this video to everybody who registered. And on the screen, you see a way to get the newsletter from Green Ivy. Thank you, everybody. Hope to see you again soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.